Okay, so everybody should have topic, ecological succession. And then your essential question is, what is the difference between primary and secondary succession? Okay, now remember, vocabulary goes in the little column because it's all in red words. And then you are listening, not writing every word on the slide. And then at the end, remember, like especially if you feel like I'm moving too fast, I show you a copy of my notes so you can check your notes and make sure you have everything written down that I have. Okay? All right, so when we're talking about ecological succession, we know there's two kinds. We know there's primary, we know there's secondary. But the basic idea is that your ecosystem is making a comeback. It's rebuilding itself after something has happened, usually some kind of disaster. Okay, so primary succession is the first one. Notice it's in red words, so that should go in your vocabulary section. Okay, when I look at this, I would summarize it with two main points that identify it as primary succession. One, it takes much longer. It takes thousands of years. So I would definitely write that down. Okay, and two is it starts with no soil. Think bare rock. It starts with no soil, and eventually it builds up till an ecosystem is formed there. So it's a new ecosystem building up where there was only rock before, no soil. So primary succession takes thousands of years and starts with no soil. Go quickly. Okay, so here are the stages of primary succession. And there's our step one, bare rock. Okay. Step two has a vocab word in it, so I'd write that in my vocabulary section. It's pioneer species. And it's just what you think of when you think of pioneer. It's the first one. It's the first species to be able to grow. Usually it's lichens or mosses. They don't need a lot of nutrients. That's why they're able to be there. They don't need a lot of nutrients. And here's the important thing we need to know about pioneer species. They break down, they decompose, and they make soil. So first of all, when they're living, they start to break down the rock. Once they die, they break down and give nutrients to the soil. So it is the decaying, decomposing, dead moss that's going to make rich soil for other things to grow in. And that's how the process continues. After the pioneer species begins to die and decompose and make soil, then you've got grasses. They're a little bigger. Well, then they're going to die. They're going to decompose. And they're going to make the soil even better. And then we'll have shrubs. So as everything starts to die and decompose and decay, it gives an opportunity for larger plants and larger organisms that need more nutrients to come in and grow. And that's how ecological succession works. But remember that this whole process takes thousands of years. So to go from bare rock to stage 6, that climax community, you've got thousands of years in between. Okay, so remember I wouldn't copy down all the sentences on the screen. I would put 3 examples of primary succession. It starts with things like a volcanic eruption, like a glacier, and like new sand dunes. Because those are like bare rock or bare sand. There's nothing else. You need a pioneer species to come in first. Do we remember what a glacier is? Yeah? What is a glacier?
Large, like water ice, it freezes everything.
Yes, it is a huge river of ice that slowly flows over the ground. It's connected to landforms. Y'all remember what kind of landform that makes?
Ravines. valleys. I mean, really.
What kind of valley? Y'all know this? A
valley.
U-shaped valley. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that's what we're talking about is the glacier flows through. So that should remind you how big a glacier is. If it can make a U-shaped valley, it's a large body of ice. It scrapes everything off and just leaves behind rock. And that's one example of how primary succession gets started. You have blank rock, mosses come in and start to grow and start to decompose and create soil. Okay, secondary succession. So again, red words, go in your vocab. So secondary succession, here's the big difference. Notice the time period is different. We're not thousands of years anymore, we're talking hundreds of years for the process to take place. So it takes hundreds of years, and the reason that it only takes hundreds of years instead of thousands to regrow this ecosystem is because we actually have soil to begin with. Okay, so if you look at the picture, it was like a forest fire that happened. So the trees are burnt, larger organisms are burnt, but our grass, our soil is still there. So it's easier to rebuild. So for secondary succession, you already have soil, and it takes only hundreds of years this time to regrow your ecosystem. Okay, so again, we have stages, and it looks very similar to primary succession. The big difference is how they start. Okay, so here we've got a forest fire. Stage 2, we already have soil present. So instead of saying pioneer species come in and decompose to make the soil, we say, hey, we already have soil. So the first things that are able to grow are your grasses, and then your shrubs, and then it goes up from there. So it doesn't take as long because you already have that soil. Okay, 3 examples of things that can cause secondary succession to begin. Flood, forest fire, tornado. Those are all disasters that can damage an ecosystem dramatically, change it dramatically, but that soil is still going to be present so that it's easier to regrow.
One time I had a tornado. It was scary.
One time what?
I had to deal with a tornado.
You had to deal with a tornado?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bad.
It happened just a few years ago, and actually the tornado flew over. So Mr. Pittman was a Eustis officer instead of at the school. And so his job, part of it is like storm watch. So when the tornado was forming, he's having to sit out in his car and watch it. And so it formed over our house, like the funnel cloud. So like I had the kids in the hallway, that kind of thing, but it didn't touch down until it was further up in Eustis.
Yep. I think a few years ago there was also one that was where everybody was at Walmart, and it was
we had to sit in Walmart for like 4 hours.
Yeah, and it was forming right above Walmart.
You had to stay in Walmart for like 4 hours?
Yes, they wouldn't let us go outside.
Well, yeah, because there was a tornado.
I can knock you out and you'll be perfect fine.
Oh, that's funny. Okay,
I let my parents go out there.
so at this point, you can check your notes with mine. Remember, don't erase anything that you added to your notes, but just make sure that you didn't leave anything off. Make sure you didn't forget any part of it.
Oh, yeah, you got a lot.
And then add it in. Add in what you missed. That's fine. Once you have checked over your notes, then you need to stop and look at the question. What is the difference between primary and secondary succession? Well, that's your summary at the end. You know you've got it. If in your summary, you can tell me what is the biggest difference between primary and secondary succession. So you should be able to tell me in one or two sentences the biggest differences between primary and secondary succession. So update your notes and do your summary.